Every so often in the history of war, a new weapon comes along that fundamentally rewrites the rules of battle. This is a story about a revolution in unmanned aviation that's doing just that. Most people know them as drones. The Air Force calls them unmanned aerial vehicles. And right now, there are dozens of them in the skies over Iraq and Afghanistan, hunting down insurgents every minute of every day. They've become one of the most important planes in the United States Air Force, and yet the pilot is nowhere near the aircraft or the battlefield. They fly by remote control from thousands of miles away. As we first reported in May, many of the details of this weapons program are classified, but our 60 Minutes team was given secret clearance and unprecedented access to bring you this story. This barren, mountainous landscape may look like Afghanistan, but in fact, it's just 45 miles north of the Las Vegas Strip, on the edge of the Mojave Desert. This is Creech Air Force Base, home to the only wing in the Air Force where none of the pilots ever leave the ground.
This is a new way to wage war.
Colonel Chris Chambliss was one of the top F-16 fighter pilots in the Air Force, a member of the legendary Thunderbirds. Now the unit he commands has no jets, just these pilotless planes, known as the Reaper and the Predator. This is the first base in Air Force history that exclusively flies unmanned aircraft. Right now, sitting here at Creech, we are about 7,500 miles away from the battlefield in Iraq or Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. How close, though, is this base to the fight that's going on there?
I don't think we're 7,500 miles away at all. I think if you walk out the hangar and you go into one of the ground control stations, you're in the fight.
The fight for the pilots is on a video screen. Here, a truck full of insurgents in Afghanistan is being tracked by the pilot. When the ground commander gives the order, he fires, hitting his target. The trigger is pulled in Nevada, inside these cramped single-wide trailers and small offices. 250 pilots work in shifts around the clock. Alongside each one of them is a crew member who operates the plane's onboard camera and a behind-the-scenes team of intelligence analysts. The planes aren't launched here at Creech. They take off from locations in Iraq and Afghanistan, and crews here take control by satellite once the aircraft is several thousand feet in the air. All the screens that you see are secret. The Air Force declassified these pictures for our report. What you see here is the pilot's real-time view of the battlefield from thousands of feet in the air, being beamed back live from cameras mounted on the unmanned planes. It's what the soldiers on the ground call their eyes in the sky.
I'm living the same fight as those guys, or at least I'm seeing the same fight.
Lieutenant Colonel Chris Goff flew F-16 combat missions over Kosovo. Now he flies combat missions over Afghanistan by remote control.
There are arguments that we aren't as engaged in the war. I've heard those arguments. And I can tell you that, and I'm happy to tell you, that I've never been more engaged in a conflict in my life.
And he's never been safer. Lieutenant Colonel Goff sits half a world away from the war zone.
Physiologically, the stimulus and response, exactly the same. I'm not going 400 miles an hour, which means when I pull the stick, I don't get 5 Gs on my body. I have much more ability to process and to comprehend what's going on the battlefield and the information just conveyed to me, and better relay that information to who needs it.
Is it stressful?
Terribly.
And terribly in demand. Soldiers on the ground have come to depend on it. I've heard the guys say, you know, they don't want to step out the door without eyes in the sky.
Sure. I have a brother who's in Army Special Forces, and honestly, I wouldn't want him stepping out the door without this thing over top of him either.
The Air Force now has 28 Reapers. Each one costs about $11 million. It can fly as high as 50,000 feet, sit over a target for 15 hours straight, and is as dangerous as a fighter jet. So, this is the Reaper over here?
This is it.
It's the Air Force's newest and most lethal unmanned plane, and Lieutenant Colonel Goff gave us a rare look. This is a 500-pound bomb?
Correct. 500-pound laser-guided bomb.
But the most important weapon is the aircraft's $1 million camera.
I don't want them to know that I'm watching their every move. And that unseen, unblinking eye is really the effect that I want to give the ground commander. The fact that they don't know that I'm watching them. That's really the magic.
The Air Force also has 116 Predators. It's smaller than the Reaper, but it can stay up in the air even longer, 24 hours at a time. It can be miles away from its target, flying undetected through the clouds, while zooming in on an unsuspecting enemy. We saw that ourselves when the Air Force flew a Predator over our heads, about 2 miles high in the sky. This is how good the image is from a Predator at around 10,000 feet. What you're looking at is Creech Air Force Base, and I'm on the ground. Even though I know there's a Predator directly overhead, I still can't hear a thing, pretty much like an insurgent on the ground in Afghanistan or Iraq. And if you look up to the exact spot where we're being told the Predator is flying right now, there's nothing but clouds.